A house in Tasmania that drives its residents insane. A hook-handed boogeyman snatching kids from the woods. Government officials demanding birth certificates for cows. Your first instinct is likely to dismiss these as tabloid filler or internet hoaxes. They sound like the kind of exaggerated stories told specifically to generate clicks or keep children away from danger. But every one of those scenarios is real. Each one is a documented event that the public simply failed to explain. When we encounter an anomaly we don't understand, we naturally fill that gap with sensationalism. It's a psychological reflex. If the truth is too obscure, we invent a story that is much louder. To understand how society processes fear and bureaucracy, we have to trace the specific real-world anomalies that these stories are trying and failing to describe. Take the legend of the West Hobart haunted house. In the late 80s, rumors spread about a family in Tasmania falling into a collective delirium. Locals were convinced the home was haunted by a presence that was slowly destroying the residents' sanity. There was no ghost. The family was indeed losing their grip on reality, but the cause was a physical contamination of their primary water source. A vine had grown over the home, dropping leaves into the family's rainwater tank for years. That plant was datura, or devil's trumpet. It contains powerful hallucinogens, and the family had been inadvertently consuming microdoses every single day. We see the same pattern in Switzerland with Le Loyon. For a decade, locals reported a gas mask-wearing creature roaming the woods, a figure many believed was a monster or an alien. The reality was a tragedy of isolation. Le Loyon was a person with a facial disfiguration who walked the woods for what they called happiness therapy. When the media began portraying them as a monster, the individual left a death certificate for the ghost and disappeared. In both cases, society misdiagnosed biological accidents and physical isolation as supernatural threats. We turned victims of circumstance into the villains of a story. Sometimes we build these myths to hide from a reality that is far more mundane. On Staten Island, parents use the legend of Cropsey, a scarred, hook-handed killer, to keep their children out of the woods. Children really were disappearing, but the killer wasn't a campfire ghost. It was Andre Rand, a man who lived in the area and had already been arrested for a previous attack. Rand was a former employee of the Willowbrook State School, an institution infamous for its brutal treatment of children. The legend of the boogeyman was born out of a very real, very public institutional failure. In the UK, the Purple Aku legend followed a similar path. Teenagers spoke of a mussel-eating giant who hunted rugby players, a story so ridiculous most people thought it was entirely made up. But Aki was Akinwale Arobieke, a man who was repeatedly arrested for stalking and muscle-feeling compulsions. His harassment eventually caused a 16-year-old boy to flee onto train tracks, where he was electrocuted. Both Rand and Arobieke were known to the authorities for years before their crimes escalated. By framing them as hook-handed monsters or giants, the community treats their presence as an unfixable myth rather than a documented failure of public safety. In West Bengal, a modern policy debate has recently devolved into this exact kind of folklore. Ahead of the Bakrid festival, headlines appeared claiming politicians were demanding birth certificates for cattle. It sounds like a fabricated political meme. The idea of verifying the exact birth date of millions of head of livestock seems like a bureaucratic impossibility designed to cause panic. The reality is rooted in the sudden enforcement of a specific piece of legislation, the 1950 Bengal Animal Slaughter Control Act. This chart shows the narrow legal window created by that law. To be legally slaughtered, a cow must be over 14 years old. Without official records, authorities are left in the absurd position of trying to prove an animal's age by its teeth or physical condition. This 70-year-old legal loophole is now generating real-world violence and bizarre headlines. It shows that an outdated law can be just as disruptive to a community as a supernatural legend. This brings us back to the Bunny Man of Virginia. The legend says an axe-wielding rabbit hangs victims from a bridge. The actual event was much smaller. In 1970, a man in light-colored clothing threw a hatchet at a car, trespassing on his property. One man, one hatchet, one night. From West Hobart to West Bengal, we see the same transformation. A specific, mundane data point, a plant, a predator, or a law, gets wrapped in layers of local lore and public panic. These narratives serve as distorted warning signs. They highlight the specific friction points where our systems have failed, whether it's a contaminated water supply, an outdated legislative loophole, or a known criminal falling through the cracks. The next time a story sounds entirely too wild to be true, don't ask if it's fake. Start looking for the obscure reality that the public is trying to explain.